Hello, this is Daniel from Samden's Couch. In this video I'm going to show you how I upgraded my PS3 Super Slim from a regular hard drive to a 1TB Samsung 870 Evo SSD. I will also show you how you can back up your files before upgrading and how much of a performance advantage this upgrade delivers. I recently was able to buy myself a brand new PS3 Super Slim in its 12GB edition, which I instantly upgraded with a 500GB hard drive. I made a video about it as well. You can find the link in the description of this video. After playing with it for some time and downloading a bunch of PlayStation Network games, I quickly reached the limit of my available 500GB storage space. I thought about getting a 1TB hard drive for my PlayStation 3, but then looked at the prices. It is actually not much more expensive nowadays to buy an SSD equivalent when switching from a mechanical drive to an SSD drive. Going from a good 1TB hard drive to a good quality 1TB SSD is around a $20 difference, and that is with going quality. If you don't care much, you could even go cheaper on an SSD. But since I acquired a beautiful new PlayStation 3, I wanted something nice and longer lasting for my PlayStation 3. So I ended up choosing the Samsung 870 Evo SSD, which I am unboxing right now. This SSD has great ratings, fast speeds, and an affordable price tag. There have been many discussions online about if it makes sense getting an SSD for a PS3, and how the PlayStation operating system doesn't support things like trim to keep the SSD healthy for a long time. But I also know that new SSDs don't rely on the OS supported functions as much anymore, and do a lot of data garbage collecting with its firmware by itself. And if you don't keep deleting and installing new games every other day, you should be fine for many years to come. And looking at the little price difference while gaining speed by choosing an SSD, it's definitely worth it to me. But before I went ahead and put an SSD into my PS3, I didn't want to lose all my downloads that I had already done. How do you get your PS3 data from one storage device to another? The answer is with an external SSD or hard drive. Unfortunately, that means all the data has to be backed up through the USB 2.0 port of the PS3, which for modern standards is of course not very fast. Plus the PS3 also encrypts the backup, making it an even slower process. We need an external drive that has at least as much space as the PS3's internal drive has. The external drive also needs to be formatted in the FAT32 file format. But let's start the process from the beginning. The format problem. For the PS3 to be able to recognize an external drive, it needs to be formatted in the FAT32 format. But Windows, for example, doesn't let you format a drive in FAT32 if it's above 40GB in size. Since I want to use a 500GB external drive for my backup, I need another program to help me format the drive to its full capacity. I recommend GUI Format. It is free and you can download it under the shown URL. This is the part that made my life hard. Modern operating systems can put an EFI partition onto your drive, which virtually is positioned before the actual partition that you write your files and games on. And guess what? The PS3 only reads the first partition, and if it's not the main one and finds the EFI partition first, the PS3 won't try any longer to mount the drive and just stops. You also can't just completely delete your drive in Windows or Mac and call it a day. The EFI partition is write protected. But there is a solution. I use Windows 10 for this step. Type run into the Windows search bar and hit return. Type in disk part and press return. To find our backup drive, we have to type in list disk and confirm with return. Find your backup drive in this list, which in my case is disk 1. Type in select disk 1 and hit return. Make sure this is the correct disk and then type in clean and confirm with return, which will completely wipe the disk. After this is done, it should say disk part succeeded in cleaning the disk, and the disk volume should disappear from Windows. Go back into the Windows search bar and type in disk management. An initialize disk prompt pops up. Select MBR, master boot record, and press OK. Select your wiped disk, which is disk 1 in my case, right click and select New Simple Volume. Keep clicking Next and format the drive as NTFS, since Windows doesn't offer FAT32 anymore. Hit Finish and the hard drive is formatted now without an FE partition. Close Disk Management and open GUI format. You can name your drive if you want. I'm naming mine Backup. And after a few seconds, the formatting is done. When you open Disk Management Backup, you can find your drive now with only one partition and format it as FAT32, just as the PS3 likes it. Now you can just eject your backup drive, and we are ready to make a PS3 backup. Before making a backup, make sure to sync your trophies to PSN, as they aren't backed up. Backup time. One important thing to remember is to go into settings of the PS3 and deactivate the system auto off function. The backup utility is going to take many hours, and unfortunately it's not smart enough to temporarily deactivate auto off mode on the console. So if you don't want your backup to get ruined by the PS3 going to sleep in the middle of your backup, you should turn the rest mode completely off. Now it's time to go into the backup utility of the PS3 and start our backup onto our external USB drive. Thanks to the slow USB 2 interface, it took my PS3 almost 18 hours to do a full backup. Once the backup finished successfully, it is time to get my old 500GB hard drive out. It is not fun removing the plastic storage latch of the PS3 Super Slim, so I hope this will be the last time I have to open my PS3. I'm sliding my old drive out, and I will now have to take all the screws out to be able to use the hard drive cage for my brand new SSD. Sliding the new SSD into the cage, with the connectors facing to the left side. You have to be a little careful, because these little screws love to strip easily. Once the SSD is screwed into the frame, it is time to slide it into the PS3. This part is straightforward, and one more screw is left to secure the SSD inside the PS3. Before closing my PS3 up, I'm removing some dust with a soft brush. And now it's time to slide the plastic cover back into place. I'm making sure it fully slides in so that nothing can move or rattle later on. Normally, you would need to have to download the PS3 firmware from the official PlayStation support website onto a computer and then copy it onto a FAT32 formatted USB thumb drive. And then have the thumb drive plugged into the PS3 when installing a new hard drive or SSD. But the PS3 Super Slim model that I own, which is the 12GB version, actually didn't require this step, since it's already had the firmware on its internal 12GB storage, and it just boots up without a problem. If you have an older PS3 model though, don't forget to do this extra step. The PS3 boots up and tells me it needs to format the new internal storage. To be able to select anything, you need to plug in your controller into the PlayStation with its USB cable to be recognized again. The formatting is done quickly, followed by a reboot of the console, and we are now ready to get our backup files onto the new SSD. I'm going back to the backup utility and select Restore this time. The PS3 formats the SSD once more, reboots, and then starts the restoring process, which took my PlayStation almost an entire day. It's always best to let these backup tasks run overnight if you have a lot of games installed, like I do. Once the restoring process is done, you have to activate your PlayStation again to be able to do anything that has to do with the PlayStation network. And I'm done! My 1TB SSD is shown now to have a capacity of 931GB. Now, how much faster is the SSD compared to a hard drive? I knew it wouldn't be a huge difference, but even a little bit better performance is worth it to me, especially since SSDs aren't much more money anymore compared to their hard drive counterparts. I did some side-by-side benchmarks. First, how does the interface feel? It is not instantly visible, but loading many icons and game previews, thumbnails from the SSD feels a little snappier and loads in a little faster. It comes in handy when you have a ton of downloaded games on your internal storage. Next benchmark is Gran Turismo 6, loading into the Nürburgring track until you can actually drive. The results are in, and the SSD saved us around 7 seconds of loading time on this specific track. In this benchmark, I'm loading into the Goodwood Festival of Speed, track 1-1. Just like the Nürburgring, the SSD saves us loading time. this time around 5 seconds. Now what about saving a game? Here I am saving my GT6 progress manually. This gives us around 1.5 seconds lead over the mechanical hard drive. Let's switch games. I'm booting up Little Big Planet Karting and loading into the first track, Garden Grip. The SSD saves us around 5 seconds loading time, similar to how Gran Turismo 6 loaded into a track. Now let's try the game Grand Theft Auto 4, booting the game into my save file that I have created. And in the end, the SSD saves us 9 seconds of loading time. Next benchmark is the racing game Motorstorm. And as a surprise result, this game loads exactly the same as it does from the hard drive. conclusion. The upgrade to an SSD was definitely worth it to me. It doesn't magically turn a PS3 into a PS5, but since the price difference is so little between a regular hard drive and an SSD, it does make sense to upgrade. And if you are playing games that need to load a lot of files, like Gran Turismo 6, after some playtime you will start to appreciate the saved time between racing around the tracks. Not every game is going to load faster, like the game Motorstorm, which loads just as fast on a regular hard drive. But in general, it will save you time, especially if you play a lot of games that require a lot of files to be loaded in and out of the system memory. So if you are going to give your PS3 an upgrade, I would recommend going all the way and buy an SSD. And if you are going to make a backup and copy your files over, just have some patience, because it will take some time. But once everything is copied over and installed, you can enjoy your new speedier PS3. How about you? Have you thought about upgrading your PS3 to an SSD? And if yes, what SSD did you end up choosing? Let me know in the comments of this video. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing to this channel if you would like to see more of my videos, cool tech reviews and games. It really helps me to make more content for you in the future. Until then, I will see you next time on Sam Dan's Couch.